Thank you so much for stopping in on this video. This one is entitled "It is a Constant Image of Your Face" by Brutus, another in the set of poems for CSEC English B, or just for your personal reading and understanding of the poem. Thank you so much for stopping in, and let's get right into it. Now let's start by summarizing the poem. In this poem, there's a constant image of your face. The persona reflects on the image of the person he cares for. Now, in the poem, we realize that the person he cares for, the person that he loves, accuses him with their eyes of the fact that he has broken their heart. Now, the persona admits that he has interest in both of them, and he can make no excuses for his behavior because the love interest does not take priority over his country or his land. Now, despite the fact that the persona is pleading guilty and he's asking for mercy for being seduced by his love interest's beauty, he is also protecting, the persona also protects him dearly, and he admits that as a result of this, he has gone against his country. He has committed treason. In the end, he hopes that both his country and his dearest love will forgive him because of the love that he feels for both of them. In other words, Brutus here is trying to explain that he is divided with his love, and it's very hard for him to choose between his country and the physical love that he feels for someone else. And one is left probably being sympathetic towards the plight of the persona in this poem, because the persona knows that loving his country is one thing, and the love that he has for a person, the woman, is another thing. But at the same time, he feels as if he is betraying one for the other, and vice versa. Now, as we continue into the poem, it does become a little bit clearer for you to understand where the persona is really caught between trying to choose or trying to get his love to understand the choice that he has to make between his country and the love. The speaker's love for country is quite clear in the poem. The persona dearly loves his country, and Brutus is a South African. And yes, he was around at the time when there was the racial segregation called apartheid in his governance system. And he was also one of those front runners in trying to put an end to apartheid. And through his poems, we can understand his need to want to be there for his country in the fight that had really and truly, in reality, landed him in prison. Now, Brutus's love for his country is clearly seen here. And it is the constant image of your face is most definitely open for interpretation from whoever is reading it. One could read it as a love poem in which he is putting forward his love for a woman through his love for his country, and saying that the love for his country comes before everything else. Or one could also think about this poem from the perspective that it is a political poem and it is disguised by the metaphor of a lover. Now, whichever way you interpret this poem, there is one clear theme in this poem, and that is the love that he feels for his country. Now, you may think that the lover he speaks of is a hidden metaphor for his country, and a country which is burdened by apartheid or racial segregation, and a country which he has become unfaithful to because he continued his devotion to his country before apartheid, seeing as how apartheid did not begin until 1948. Now, what we can see is that Brutus feels guilty of being unfaithful to his country of birth, to South Africa, in a way that he fought for the abolition of apartheid. Now, let's summarize the poem. With all of that said, let's summarize the poem. The poem is often compared to one of the other poems on the list. This is A Dark Time, My Love, and it's another poem that involves the love for country. Now, in many ways, we classify this particular poem as a love poem. It has 2 stanzas, and the persona has recognized the serious dilemma in which he is. The love for a woman to whom he is talking throughout the poem, and the love for the country that he was born into. At the first, in stanza 1, we see that the persona places the blame on the woman, as he wants us to understand that it is because he loves this woman so much that he has betrayed his country. And this comes from his loyalty that he has pledged to his country first. Now, in stanza 2, he honestly concedes that he has gone against his country. He has committed treason. And he has done this because of the attraction and the beauty and because of his heart towards this woman. And he believes that it is the woman's beauty and his own feelings for this woman that comes together to allow him to commit treason to his country. He ends the poem by saying that he hopes that his country will forgive him for the crime he has committed in loving a woman. Now let's go through each stanza, one line by line. In line 1, we see the constant unchanging image of a woman's face that stays with him. In many ways, we are looking at the memory that he faces here. It's the memory of the woman. And the eyes of the woman is saying, that he is putting him in a position then, to say that he has to choose between the country and his woman. In line 2, the persona uses the word framed, and this is used as a metaphor. In the same way we frame pictures, it is the same way that Brutus wants us to understand that he frames the memory of a loved one. And we can all frame memories of our loved ones. We have them in the back of our heads and we put them to one side. The persona remembers her face as it was the day that he held her. In line 3, there is grave attention. Now, when we talk about grave, at a first glance, we do know that grave is associated with death. And so we understand that the situation is quite serious. The woman is looking at him in a serious way, of course, and of course she's going to be sad in many ways because she knows that there is a strong competition going on, and it's not as though she can compete with another woman. It's a competition for her lover's feelings towards his country, and that is perhaps why it becomes grave in many ways, because this woman understands that she cannot compete with a country. Nothing that is human then. She cannot compete with it for the persona's love. In line 4, we find that the persona is surrounded by knives in his activity. And when we think about this, we want to talk about knives and why the persona brings knives into this. We all know that knives cut. And so is it that we are talking about a physical knife that cuts when we're talking about the guerrilla fighting that took place in the country? Or are we talking about the real knife that inflicts wounds on a person physically? Or are we talking about the inner pain that he feels, that we all know that knives bring pain and suffering to an individual? And is it that it's the metaphorical pain that he feels and not so much a physical pain with the world of knives? In line 5 to 6, the persona admits that he cannot forget her face, and that is understandable. This is the face that allows him to feel the guilt of betraying his country for his love. For a woman, it becomes clear here that loving this woman can be dangerous because on the one hand, he loves this woman and he has to give up his love for his country, or he has to temper that love that he has for his country. And he describes the fact that he loves this woman, and in his heart, he knows that turning his back on his country is treason, it's treacherous in so many ways, because his country was going through a lot at that time with all the racial segregation that was happening. He didn't believe that he could turn his love towards a woman and forget about the fact that he has to fight for his country. And so he doesn't forget her face, because with her, he has to choose between a country and that emotional state for a human being. His heart betrays the country because he leans more towards the woman, and so he becomes conflicted because he understands the seriousness of wanting to fight for the freedom of his people, and that is what strengthens his love for his country. But at the same time, he wants that physical commitment and connection with somebody with whom he can share a physical kind of love. And so he becomes conflicted in many ways. So he doesn't forget her face. He will always remember her face because of the feelings that he has for her. In line 79, the persona says neither of them can make excuses because the woman knows that he is loyal to his country at most and not to her, and that she comes in second in terms of his love. She knows that. And she does not make excuses for it, and neither can he make excuses for this love, because the love of his country supersedes the love that he has for this woman. In stanza 2, let's go into line 10. The persona pleads for mercy from his other love, his country. He admits he feels guilty, that he loves someone, and that love for that someone is going above his love for his country. And so he wants his country to understand that this is happening to him. He is guilty, but at the same time, he wants the mercy of his country. He doesn't want to seem as if he does not love his country on that level. And so he pleads for the mercy here, for understanding that, he loves this woman more than he loves his country at this point. In lines 11 to 5, the woman, her beauty, it is her beauty that allows him to fall into her and her love. And so in the persona's mind, he sees the woman as being in cahoots, as an accomplice in stealing his love for his country. And by doing this, she is in turn attempting to blackmail him, forcing him to choose between his country and her. And of course, she understands this, but at the same time, the persona feels as though he is caught in the middle of a blackmail, where the woman wants him to love her more. She is also protective and nurturing, and this allows him to be unashamed of admitting that he has betrayed his country by loving her. So in many ways, what we're getting here by lines 11 to 15 of the poem, the whole idea we're getting here is, it's not that the woman does not do for him not what his country has done, but it is not that she hasn't done enough for him, because she is there for him. She's protective of him. She nurtures him. And this is one of the reasons he can be now in a situation then that he is finding it complicated to choose between the two loves that he has. On the one hand, his country has done a lot for him. On the other hand, this woman has done a lot for him. And so he is now feeling that kind of guilt of trying to decide which one should come first, when in fact he knew at the onset that it was the love for the country that took priority. In line 60, we see that the persona hopes that his country will forgive him, because in his mind, this is treason. He has put his country behind his other love, and so for him, this is treason. And he hopes that his country will not hold him or her accountable for his actions. In line 18, we see where the persona makes a comparison between the woman and his country. He notes that the country is either the woman's mistress, meaning that the country is meaning superior, or her match, her equal in tenderness. Now, at the last line of the poem, we recognize that there is an extent to which the persona is conflicted, but that he is hopeful that both of them would be tender enough to forgive him for the choice that he has to make between country and woman. The literary devices that we find in the poem, one would be personification, and that one is quite understandable. It's easy to recognize in the poem. In lines 4, the love interest's eyes constantly accuses and convicts the persona. This device is basically highlighting the extent to which the woman has hurt this person. Line 18 to 20 again, the persona hopes that his country, his other dearest love, will forgive him. Now, we all know giving human qualities to an object or a thing is personification. So for him to want his country, which is his dearest love, to forgive him, a country cannot physically or literally forgive him for the treasonous act of loving another. But this is what he hopes, that his country will forgive him. We find the patriotism as a common theme in this poem, nationalism in many ways, yes. And we find that the patriotism here defines the persona's relationship to his country. We also see oxymoron in the poem. Now, the heart's treachery implies or suggests that the heart, which is very important, and it is also an indicator of love, has committed a terrible crime. It also emphasizes the heartbreak that the persona has caused his love interest. And this oxymoron, the heart's treachery, is also very important to the poem. Now, some of the important words and the phrases are here. The constant image, meaning it's repeated. The persona constantly or always remembers his love interest's face. It emphasizes also the guilt he feels in relation to this person. There is also grave attention. The seriousness of the attention here we're talking about. Grave is serious, and therefore we understand that this person is really hurt by what is happening. There is the world of knives. We know that a knife causes destruction, it causes pain, it causes hurt. The persona therefore is identifying a world in which he's living and in which he finds pain, and which pain is reflected on him as a person. So the other one is such blackmail with your beauty. Of course, we know that to blackmail someone, it's where we have a hold over that person and we do things to get that person under our control. The love interest, it's her beauty that has him captivated, and therefore it will want him to betray his country, sorry. And finally, the mood in the poem is one of reflection. Again, we find a reflective poem where the persona is looking back and thinking about the persons, the two things or persons that he loves, and in this case, we want to call the country a person for personification purposes. It's the two loves that he has here, and the two love that is present here, sorry, and the fact that he cannot decide between the love for his country and the love for this woman. The tone in the poem, definitely riddled with guilt and sadness. The persona feels guilt because of this love escapade that's going on. The triangle of love here, he's caught between his country, the woman, and himself makes the third part of that triangle. And so he becomes sad. And he uses all of these words and these descriptions to present the sadness that he is feeling, the whole idea of betrayal, of treason, of the knives, of just trying to choose between the woman and his country. And so we recognize the sadness he feels and the guilt that comes on him when he thinks about the decision that he has to make. When we're talking about the themes now, we're going to talk about patriotism, the love for country. We're talking about places, we're talking about dreams, we're talking about desires, we're talking about guilt, we are talking about love. Now again, if you have watched it to the end of the video, I'd want to say to you that yes, this video may not cover everything that you may want to know about this particular poem, but it is always good to read elsewhere as well and to get additional information that can help you. Thank you so much for watching. It's always a pleasure having you here, and I do hope you learned something from this poem.